Welcome to Value Plays Only, where Orcish Bowmasters is fair, just don't play any creatures. Today, we have Dan playing Omnath, Locus of Creation. This Sands Black combo deck is looking to use Omnath's landfall ability to make explosive pushes of mana. It can win with Food Chain or Underworld Breach. His hand contains Noble Hierarch, Badger Mole Cub, Rhystic Study, Red and 6, Hexing Squelcher, Mindbreak Trap, and Windswept Heath. John is playing Lonis, Cryptozoologist. This is a creature combo deck looking to use Lonis' abilities to press the advantage with clues or stumble into a convoluted Shrieking Drake loop. His hand contains a Haywire Mite, Cloud of Fairies, Flare Denial, Hydroelectric Specimen, Polluted Delta, and Command Tower. His London Mulligan is a Flusterstorm. Nick from the top deckers is playing Thrasios, Triton Hero, and Tymna the Weaver. This deck leverages two card advantage engines in the command zone to piece together either an infinite mana or Thassa's Oracle Wind. His hand contains a Demonic Tutor, Wishclaw Talisman, Swift Reconfiguration, Metal Misstep, Flooded Strand, Starting Town, and Marsh Flats. Tyler is playing Norman Osborn, aka Green Goblin. This is a discard-centric Grixis deck looking to use Norman Osborn as a mini Underworld Breach for your discard spells until you can string together a win. His hand contains a Jessica's Will, Windfall, Snap, Tainted Pact, Mana Vault, Culling the Weak, and Flooded Strand. And with that, let's see some value plays. Dan starts things off with a Windswept Heath as land for turn. He pays a life and cracks it, fetching up a Taiga. He casts a Noble Hierarch. Dan passes the turn. John plays a Flooded Strand as land for turn. He passes the turn. Nick also plays a Flooded Strand for turn. He passes the turn. Tyler also plays a Flooded Strand as land for turn. He pays a life and cracks it, fetching up an Underground Sea. He casts a Mana Vault. Tyler passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays Otawara, Soaring City as land for turn. He casts a Rhystic Study. In response, John pays life and cracks his Flooded Strand. In response, Nick pays life and cracks his Flooded Strand, fetching up a Hedge Maze, triggering to Surveil, leaving it on top. John fetches up his Hedge Maze and triggers to Surveil, also leaving it on top. Rhystic Study then resolves. Dan then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He plays Command Tower as land for turn. John shows the table a Haywire Mite in hand. He asks if they can hold off on storming into Rhystic for one turn so he can get a clue as he spends his cards removing it. Nick says he plans to pay for his one spell, and Tyler says he plans to pay for his one spell, depending on his draw. John casts his commander, Lonis, Cryptozoologist. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. John then passes the turn with an end to the Rhystic Hell in sight. Nick untaps and draws. He plays Starting Town as land for turn. He casts Mystic Remora. Rhystic triggers and Nick pays. Nick then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He says his draw wasn't exactly what he was looking for and casts Windfall. Rhystic and Mystic trigger. John begs Tyler to reconsider as he has the out to Rhystic in hand, and this means Dan will just keep snowballing advantage. Tyler says deal with it. Nick and Dan draw, and then Windfall resolves. Tyler plays a Scalding Tarn as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Volcanic Island. He casts Mox Opal. Rhystic and Mystic trigger, and both players draw. He then casts Mox Diamond. Rhystic and Mystic trigger, and both players draw, over the sound of all John's groans. Tyler then taps out to cast his commander, Green Goblin. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. Tyler then passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays a Bloodstained Mire as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Plateau. He casts a Birds of Paradise. Dan passes the turn, discarding to hand size. John untaps and draws. He plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Elf as it enters. He casts a Priest of Titania. Rhystic triggers and John says draw to your heart's content. Priest enters and Lonis triggers to make a clue. John then passes the turn. Nick untaps and at his upkeep he pays to keep Remora. He plays a Scrubland as land for turn. He casts a Noble Hierarch. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. Nick then passes the turn, discarding to hand size. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays Gemstone Caverns as land for turn. He casts an Imperial Seal. Rhystic and Mystic trigger. Nick draws and Tyler pays for Dan. Tyler then searches up a card to the top of his library and loses 2 life. He goes to combat swinging Green Goblin at Dan. Dan takes the damage and Tyler passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He casts his commander, Omnath, Locus of Creation. In response, Tyler casts Red Elemental Blast, targeting Rhystic. Rhystic and Mystic trigger. Nick draws and Tyler pays for Rhystic. Dan responds with a Flusterstorm, with all copies targeting REB. Mystic triggers and Nick draws. REB is countered, and Omnath resolves and triggers to draw. Dan then passes the turn, discarding to hand size. John untaps and draws. He plays Rejuvenating Springs as land for turn. He casts Jaheira, Friend of the Forest. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. It enters and Lonis triggers to make a clue. John casts Gilded Drake. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. It enters and triggers to change control with Omnath. Lonis triggers to make a clue. John then casts Formidable Speaker. Rhystic triggers and John taps a clue to pay. It enters and Speaker and Lonis trigger. John makes a clue and then discards Nature's Rhythm to search up Academy Manufacturer to hand. John taps a clue for mana and then activates Lonis, sacrificing 3 clues targeting Tyler, hoping for a juicy Necro. Tyler responds in order to not lose his tutored card and casts Deflecting Swat, targeting the Lonis ability. Mystic and Rhystic trigger. Tyler pays for Dan and Nick draws. Swat changes the target to Nick. John then reveals Silence, Box Diamond, and Flusterstorm off the top of Nick's library. He puts none into play, and they all go to the bottom of his library. John taps his clue for mana and then sacrifices it to draw a card. John then passes the turn. In his end step, Nick casts Noxious Revival, targeting Demonic Tutor in his grave. Rhystic triggers and Nick pays. Tutor goes to the top of his library, and the turn then moves to Nick. Nick untaps, and in his upkeep, he lets his Remora die. He plays Savannah as land for turn. He casts Orm's Chant, targeting Dan, over the many protests of Dan. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. Orm's Chant resolves, locking Dan out of casting spells this turn. He casts Culling Ritual. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. Culling Ritual blows the board to bits, adding 3 green and 6 black mana. Nick casts Llanowar Elves. Rhystic triggers and he pays. He casts the Cabbage Merchant. Rhystic triggers and he pays. Nick casts Demonic Tutor. Rhystic triggers and he pays. John says if he's just tutoring up to pass, then this is all good, and Nick says he's definitely not pushing here. Tutor resolves, and Nick searches up a card to hand. He then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. With no mana now, he goes straight to combat, swinging Green Goblin at Nick. He then passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays a Breeding Pool as land for turn, into play untap, paying 2 life. He casts a Lotus Petal. Cabbage Man triggers to make a food. He casts Derevi, Imperial Tactician. It enters and triggers to untap Plateau. He then casts Grand Abolisher. It resolves as the table get a bit more nervous. He then casts Mystic Remora. Cabbage Man makes a food. The table asks how he could possibly be in need of another engine, but Dan says it is what it is. He then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He harmonizes Nature's Rhythm from his grave by tapping Omnath. Cabbage Man, Rhystic, and Mystic trigger. Dan draws 2, and Nick makes a food. John searches up a Cabbage Man of his own to the battlefield. He then plays Tropical Island as land for turn. Omnath triggers to gain 4 life. John passes the turn. Nick untaps and draws. He casts Kinnan, Bond of Prodigy. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. He casts his commander, Thrasios, Triton Hero. Rhystic triggers and he pays. Nick then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He goes to combat and swings Green Goblin at Nick. Nick takes the damage, and Cabbage Man triggers to sacrifice a food. In a second main phase, Tyler plays Exotic Orchard as land for turn. He then passes the turn. Dan untaps, and in his upkeep, he pays to keep Remora. He casts Gilded Drake. It enters and triggers to take back Omnath. Dan goes to combat, swinging Grand Abolisher and Derevi at Tyler. He takes the damage. Derevi triggers to untap some lands. In his second main phase, Dan plays Wooded Foothills as land for turn. Omnath triggers to gain 4 life. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Savannah. Omnath triggers to make 4 mana. Dan then overloads Cyclonic Rift. 2 Cabbage Men make food. Under Grand Abolisher, there's nothing to be done here, and the non-land, non-Dan permanents are all bounced. Dan then passes the turn. John untaps and draws. He recasts the Cabbage Merchant. Rhystic triggers and he pays. John then passes the turn. Nick untaps and draws. He casts Thrasios, Triton Hero. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. He recasts Llanowar Elves. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. Nick casts Deadly Rollick, targeting Grand Abolisher. Rhystic, Mystic, and Cabbage Man trigger. Dan draws and Nick pays. Dan casts Deflecting Swat, targeting Rollick. Cabbages. Nick casts Fierce Guardianship, targeting Swat. Mystic, Rhystic, and Cabbage Man trigger. John makes a food and Dan draws 2. With that, Fierce counter Swat and Rollick exiles Abolisher. Nick then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Bloodstained Mire as land for turn. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Badlands. He passes the turn. Dan untaps and in his upkeep he debates keeping Remora. Tyler asks how the hell he could need more cards with most of his deck in hand already. Dan says he loves cards, and he pays to keep Remora. He goes to combat swinging Omnath and Derevi at Tyler. He takes the damage, and Derevi triggers to untap his lands. In his second main phase, Dan plays Arid Mesa as land for turn. Omnath triggers to gain 4 life. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a Tundra. Omnath triggers to make 4 mana. He casts another Value Engine, 6. The table tells him to get on with his win as it resolves. He then casts Gilded Drake. It enters and triggers targeted Cabbage Merchant. John responds with a Veil of Summer. Rhystic and Mystic trigger and Dan draws 2. Dan pays 2 life for a Metal Misstep. Cabbages. John responds with a Mindbreak Trap. Rhystic and Mystic trigger and Dan draws 2. Metal is exiled and Veil resolves and John draws a card. Gilded Drake's ability then fails to resolve and is sacrificed. He then casts Ranger Captain of Eos. It enters and triggers to search up a Mockingbird to hand. He casts Wild Growth, targeting Breeding Pool. Cabbages. Dan then passes the turn, discarding to hand size. John untaps and draws. He plays an island as land for turn. He casts Jaheira, Friend of the Forest. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. Dan responds with a Force of Will, paying a life and exiling Mockingbird as an alternate cost. John casts Flusterstorm with all copies targeting Force. Force is countered and Jaheira resolves. John taps 3 food to help recast Lonis, Cryptozoologist. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. John casts Academy Manufactor. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. Dan responds with a Pact to Negation, really just having it all. Cabbage Man makes a food. Manufactor is countered. John then casts Badger Mole Cub. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. It enters and Badger Mole and Lonis trigger. John makes a food and then Earthbend's Hedge Maze. He then passes the turn. Nick untaps and draws. He casts Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. He then casts the Cabbage Merchant. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. In response to Cabbage Man, Tyler casts Ad Nauseum. Rhystic, Mystic, and Cabbage Man trigger. John makes a food and Dan draws 2. He then casts Swan Song. Cabbages. Ad Naus is countered and Tyler makes a 2/2 bird. The Cabbage Merchant then resolves and Nick passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He casts Bergie, God of Storytelling. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. He casts Norman Osborn. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. Tyler then passes the turn, begging Dan to get them out of this game. Dan untaps and in his upkeep, Remora and Pact to Negation trigger. Dan pays for Pact and then lets his Remora die. He plays Shifting Woodland as land for turn. Omnath triggers to gain 4 life. He goes to combat and swings his board at Tyler. Tyler blocks 6 with Bergie, Omnath with Norman, a Ranger Captain with his bird. He takes 3 from Ranger Captain and Derevi triggers to untap a land. In his second main phase, Dan casts Mox Diamond. Cabbages, cabbages. Dan discards City Brass as it enters. He casts Chrome Mox. Cabbages, cabbages. He imprints Esper Sentinel. Dan shouldn't be able to do this, as Esper is an artifact, but the table don't notice. Dan then casts Crop Rotation, sacrificing a land as an additional cost. Cabbages, cabbages. Nick responds with a Flusterstorm, with all copies targeting Crop Rotation. Rhystic triggers and Nick pays. Crop Rotation is countered, and Dan amazingly has to pass the turn here. John untaps and draws. He casts a Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy, hoping to get them out of this game. Rhystic triggers and John pays. Nick responds with a Force of Will, paying a life and exiling Swan Song as an alternate cost. Rhystic and Cabbage Man trigger. John makes a food and Dan draws. In response, John hard casts Force of Negation. Rhystic and Cabbage Man trigger. Nick makes a food and then John pays. Dan casts an Offer You Can't Refuse, targeting Force of Negation. Cabbages, cabbages. Force is countered and John makes 2 treasures. Force then counters Kinnan. John then casts Formidable Speaker. Rhystic triggers and John pays. It enters and Speaker and Lonis trigger. John makes a clue and then discards his only card in hand to search up a Phyrexian Metamorph to hand. John casts Phyrexian Metamorph. Rhystic triggers and John pays. It enters as a copy of Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. Lonis triggers to make a clue. John then floats 8 green from his foods to help activate Kinnan. He looks at the top 5, putting a Bloom Tender into play. Lonis triggers to make a clue. He activates Kinnan again, looking at the top 5 and putting Seedborn Muse into play. The table all pucker up at this board, spiraling out of control. John then goes to combat, swinging Badger Mole Cub, Cabbage Man, and Jaheira at Dan. Dan takes the damage, and John passes the turn. In his end step, Dan casts Snap, targeting Seedborn Muse. Cabbages, cabbages. In response, John activates Kinnan one more time, putting Mutagen Man, Living Ooze, into play. Lonis triggers to make a clue. John taps the clue 4 mana and sacrifices 2 clues to draw 2 cards. He hasn't found an answer, and Snap resolves, bouncing Seedborn and untapping 2 lands. The turn finally moves to Nick. Nick untaps and draws. He casts Eternal Witness. Rhystic triggers and Dan draws. Witness enters and triggers to add Demonic Tutor back to his hand. Nick casts Demonic Tutor. Rhystic and Cabbage Man trigger. John makes a food and Dan draws. Nick searches up a card to hand and then casts Smothering Tithe. Rhystic and Cabbage Man trigger. John makes a food and Dan draws. Nick then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. Tithe triggers to make a treasure. He recasts Norman Osborn. Rhystic triggers and Tyler pays. He then passes the turn. Dan untaps and draws. Tithe triggers to make a treasure. He plays Flooded Strand as land for turn. Omnath triggers to gain 4 life. He pays life and cracks it, fetching up a tropical island. Omnath triggers to make 4 mana. Dan sacrifices Ranger Captain of Eos, locking his opponent out of non-creature spells this turn. He then casts Emil the Blessed. In response, John activates Formidable Speaker to untap Hedge Maze. Nick shows John a card to incentivize him not to spin Kinnan right now. John agrees and passes priority. Nick responds with an Orcish Bowmasters. Rhystic triggers and he pays. It enters and triggers to ping Derevi for 1. John then cracks a clue to draw a card. Tithe the Bowmaster trigger. Nick pings Derevi for 1 more and makes a treasure. John cracks his last clue to draw. Tithe the Bowmaster trigger. Nick pings Derevi for 1 more, killing it. He then makes a treasure. Dan then retraces Derevi from grave with 6. Derevi enters and triggers targeting Shifting Woodland. He responds by paying 4 to make Woodlands into a copy of Gaia's Cradle in his grave. He then floats 4 with Gaia's Cradle and pays 3 into Emil to flicker Derevi, untapping Cradle again. He uses this loop to generate infinite green mana. With some of his infinite mana, he can flicker all his other lands to make infinite mana of all of his colors. He then activates Emil to flicker Omnath, and it enters to draw. Bowmaster and Tithe trigger. Dan pays and responds to Bowmaster by flickering Omnath and drawing again. He presents a loop of drawing his deck 1 card at a time, stacking up more and more Bowmaster triggers against his face. After he's drawn his deck, Dan casts Angel's Grace. The Bowmaster triggers then all blast his face, but Dan can't die. Dan then starts casting all the creatures in his deck. He casts Finale Devastation with X equals 1,000,000, pumping his whole board. He goes to combat and blows everyone to bits. And with that, Dan finally wins the game. So, what did we learn today? Turns out, turn 2 Rhystic into Remora into 6 and Overloaded Cyclonic Rift into 2 more turns of Dirtling is a recipe for success. Take notes, Turbo players. If you have any tips for the video, leave them below. Subscribe if you feel like it. Until next time, keep making value plays. Hey, so if I just cast my commander, are we all going to be chill about this Rhystic? And I will commit to next turn using this Haywire Mite to out it. Like, if everyone can hold off on storming off a ton, I literally am going to out it next turn. I'm just
see what happens. More than likely, I'll also pay for one spell that
realistically. You remember when I said, I'm not going to out it right now if we can all be chill? And he said, yeah, no, it'll be good, don't worry.
I said I need to see what I draw.
Dude, fucking criminal.
John, you were going to make John crap out.
How could that be right? How could it be Taiga Plateau
it's just what
every game?
It's just what I like.
It's what I like.
Yeah, have fun, dude. Here's my thing. I'm pretty sure I can just still stop him.
Oh, okay.
And when that happens, I mean, Tyler can't cast Naws and you don't have any of your mana.
Yeah,
and I hope to untap.
It's just, to me, the implication was that he showed me a card and then you said, oh, but look at this.
Well, I didn't know there was an Orms chant. I don't know how much you have. You didn't show me shit about your giant fucking 10-card pile.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe share the riches.
Yeah,
look, there's a no-win and there's a culling ritual.
This is
so we need 2
win.
counters.
Bro, I'm just letting you know I would have done
when he puts silence out, we now need 3 counters or it's irrelevant. Why don't you show me some of your hand? I literally showed you my entire hand. Why don't you help me out?
At this point, no, you let my whole board die. You showed me a card and I'm
showing okay, you my entire hand and you're not going to work with me?
You just chose to show it to me. What am I supposed to say? Like, oh,
but I'm saying awesome. I'm showing you good faith and you're being tight-lipped. Now I'm going to let Adnaz resolve and kill you. he's going to kill all of you.
You're not going to let Adnaz resolve. And you look like the most threatening human on the planet. So,
yeah.
And I hope you have some counter magic in case it's needed. Oh wait, he's jamming all the time.
I'm not jamming.
Never holding up mana.
What did this jam towards?
You played Mystic instead of holding up a blue. I swear, Dan. It's like, what the fuck, dude?
You're like,
what are the odds that I draw the card?
Dan's definitely jamming on his next turn, but so are you.
I'm not jamming.
I'm definitely not.
I'm not jamming.
Why'd you cast Grand Abolisher?
Because fuck you.
No, literally. Because
you said you're worried about me?
No, not you. I'm not
him. For 2 more turns.
I'm gonna be honest. He's a permanent I could cast. So I cast him to get him out of my hand.
Fuck you.
The other 2 permanents I have are lands.
I cannot kill a Abolisher. Man, if I could, I would.
That's what I'm talking about. You can just get them to waste their cards.
It's not a waste if you invalidate my entire hand. Like, there's no point in me having any cards if you untap with that.
Should've let me know. Could've helped.
I didn't cast Culling the Ritual, dude.
You guys could've...
Look at your neighbor. Neither of us countered the Culling Ritual. Neither of us cast it.
You could've, is what I'm saying. You could've. And then I could be here playing with you guys, helping out.
Helping out.
I could be, you know...
Rich just always says helping out. I think they mean the other thing. Dude, no non-creatures. Pass.
Sure.
Give me 1 food, dickwad. You want your Omnath?
I'm gonna take my Omnath.
Here's what I'm willing to talk to you about.
I'm listening, but it's not much. There's barely anything.
Wait, I'm about to pass on this.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna cast Adnaz, and I'm willing to fight to protect your Naz if you're not going for a win and you're just gonna dismantle his board with it. Okay, but I'm saying me and you are gonna work together.
No.
Okay.
Probably not. I'm probably gonna take this Naz to the brink and see what happens. I'm gonna ride this shit to the end. Dude, you've drawn half your library. If you don't have a win in that hand, I swear.
I just don't know, dude. That's what I'm worried about.
Draw more cards.
More. It's just. I feel like I should be such a threat, but I just don't know what.
Hey Dan,
to do.
you are, as evidenced by our posture towards you.
I know. And I'll cast 6.
It's crazy.
It's more value engines. It's crazy.
I'm gonna play Gilded Drake. Okay.
Dan, if you don't win here,
Dan does not. He's allergic to winning.
I can win.
I'm gonna fucking Noxious Survival your Adnaz.
Okay.
It's tough. You wouldn't let me have my Seedborn. With what? 90 mana?
We did another 12.
What are you, a bitch? Flips? I literally could spin through my entire deck if I had done.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, remember all that times you gave me crap for playing Seedborn decks?
I'll say, my My turns are the shortest turns.
No.
No, his are definitely.
Take that
his,
back. Take that back.
His turns are so short.
I'm saying
You take that back.
out of people who are playing.
That was bad taste. That was poor taste.
Out of the people who are actually playing.
Hey, I see 21 life right there.
That's true.
Yeah, you're a participant. Get us the hell out of here. Don't let Dan win. God, after all of his squandering, you can't get away with it.
You've seen nothing yet.
I'll dirtle again and again.
Everybody kept telling me I could win turn by turn, and I had no.
That's because you
no
have
ways to
Ristic
search.
and Mystic, and you keep tapping out for engines every turn.